Hi, Randy. Jason.
Roger. No, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Megan.
Zack,
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Jack. How you doing? Brendan, nice to meet you.
Megan, nice to meet you.
Amanda, nice to meet you.
Jason.
Megan, all right, nice to meet you.
Megan.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Megan Barnes. I'm joined here today by Zack Brendan O'Rourke, and Randy Perez, and we are here today to propose to you a business plan that will allow you to sustain competitive advantage through ethical leadership and values. So first, I'm going to go ahead and walk through the agenda for this afternoon. So I'm going to go ahead and take us through a current snapshot of what the company looks like today, the assignment that we have, and our recommendation. And then Zack and Brendan are going to go ahead and lead us through the features of our culture change. So Zack is going to go through the vision and the values. Brendan's going to go ahead and walk us through the processes and the leadership that this looks like with this new change. And then Randy's going to walk through the impact that all four of these will have on the IPO, as well as a financial summary for all of us. And then I will wrap it up with the conclusion. So first things first, when we take a current look at the company today, we all know that Uber has been facing problems. So we know that in terms of leadership, we've had vacant seats on the board, we've had various changes, we've had ethical issues ranging in degree over the last 12 months, and then we've also had valuation uncertainty. So we look forward to an IPO in the next 12 to 24 months, we don't really know what that looks like. So you tasked us today with coming in and analyzing these ethical issues and creating a sustainable business model for you moving forward so that you will be an attractive IPO candidate in the next 12 to 24 months. So if we look at the timeline of what that looks like, our recommendation is to fill this gap. So we know what Uber looks like today. We know that we're facing leadership issues and ethical dilemmas. We know what a sustainable or what an attractive IPO candidate looks like in the future in 12 to 24 months, with increased market share, profitability, and investor confidence. And so what is going to bridge that gap? What is the missing link? And so that's what we're here today to recommend, and that is a culture change. And so Zack is going to kick us off and start with the elements of the specified culture change plan for you.
Thanks. So in terms of a culture change, what we're looking to do is to foster a competitive advantage through renewed vision, values, and leadership to pave the way for the most successful tech IPO in history. Now, in order to do that, we really want to look at competitive advantage and what that means for Uber. In the past, competitive advantage through culture has been the intensity and the ferocity to trailblaze new markets. Today, that culture is a barrier. What we want to do is to create a new culture that's going to facilitate the future of Uber. Now, in order to do that, we need to understand what Uber's vision is. So to look at the vision statement, it's concise, it's bold, and we're not trying to change what it is that Uber does. What we're trying to change is how and why they do it. Do it with a fierce commitment to humanity. Now, with a renewed sense of value, renewed sense of vision, we want to look at what the values need to be in order to incorporate that into the processes and who Uber is as a business. So I'd like to draw your attention to Uber's 14 current values. Now, while these have helped Uber become a trailblazer in establishing a brand new ride-sharing market, they're not quite what they need to be in order to bring Uber to the mature IPO candidate of the future. It's also important to consider that these values are also the values that the current employees have internalized. It's something they associate with. So rather than transplanting a new culture into Uber, what we're trying to do is to repurpose the best parts of these values and turn them into a new set of values that's going to drive the future. Uber today is larger than cities, it's communities. It's larger than customer obsession, but rather being people-centric. Now, we're still recommending the ferocity and the champion's mindset. These are things that are going to drive Uber to compete in a very competitive market. The only thing that we're adding, besides changing, is to do the right thing always. This is going to lead the way to how Uber is going to be successful in the market and to frame success for what it means to be a leader in the tech world. So to talk about how these values are going to be incorporated into the processes, I'm going to hand it over to Brendan.
Thank you, sir. So in order for this new vision and these renewed values to reach every customer and every employee in the Uber family, we need to change the way that Uber does business on a few fronts. The first and biggest front is the hiring process. Right now, the hiring process at Uber is very analytical. It's data-based. It's based on skill, intelligence, and talent, which is great. It's gotten Uber to where they are today. What we're suggesting is we add another piece to make the hiring process more culture-focused and screening for culture fit from the beginning to the end of the hiring process. What that will do is allow for only candidates who fit this new culture to be coming in moving forward, which will eventually allow for the overall workforce to be more culture-centered in this upgraded mindset. And the next step in that process is onboarding when these new employees come in. So they have been screened for culture in the hiring process. What we need to do is really teach them what that culture really means to Uber employees. And that starts with onboarding and learning and training at the very first day that they're on board. And what that will do is allow for them to develop as Uber employees with their new culture and grow within the company and create the exact workforce that we're looking for. And finally, as those employees grow through their career, and also for the current employees who are already there, we want to upgrade the reinforcement metrics that we're using currently for evaluations and for bonuses. We want to not just be focused on numbers and financial, we also want to be focused on culture fit and really rewarding employees who drive home that culture on a day-to-day basis in the workforce. Now, to really let this culture sink in and stick, we're also recommending a fourth piece of our culture change, which is an upgrade to the leadership. Over the past year, we've had a lot of changeover on the executive board. One of our new and best fits for the company moving forward is Frances Frey. She came in as a visionary and a thought leader in the field of organizational culture and has really put her foot forward in revamping Uber's culture and getting over the issues that we've had over the past 12 months. She brought on Bozoma St. John from Apple to be the chief brand officer. Bozoma's main job is to look outward and promote the Uber brand to future investors and also to future employees and other stakeholders. So what we're recommending is add a third piece to this culture leadership team, specifically Diane Gerson. She's the current senior vice president of HR at IBM. We want to recruit Diane to join our team and come in as the chief culture officer for Uber moving forward. That will allow Bozoma to focus externally in promoting the Uber brand and allow Diane to focus internally in promoting the new Uber culture for all of the employees. She has a strong track record over the last couple decades of promoting organizational change and specifically employee relations. We think that will carry over very well to Uber as a company moving forward. And this new strategic leadership will not just signal to all of Uber employees that we're putting culture first and we're really changing the way that we do business. We'll send those same signals to potential investors when we go to an IPO over the next 12 to 24 months. And we want to look at what that really means for Uber as a company when we go public within the next 2 years. Randy's going to take us a little deeper into the financials and how the culture translates to that attractive IPO.
Brendan. So, as you heard from Brendan and Zack, our recommendations in vision, values, processes, and leadership are focused on righting the ship in terms of the recent scandals that Uber has faced. Now, we cannot lose sight of the end goal here, which is an IPO being successful in 24 months. So what gets us from recommendations to IPO success? Now, the vision, the values, process, and leadership that we recommended, that culture change has profound effects on market share and profitability, which are critical in ensuring investors feel confident about the company now and in the future. Our calculations and our valuation of the company concluded that the company needs to grow 4% at a minimum for the next 4 years in order to reach the $50 to $70 billion valuation that the market has given it in recent valuation rounds. Now, what's the way to improve market share for Uber? Uber attracts employees and contractors, the drivers, by showing them that they're a great place to work in and a great partner to build a career with. The way to do that is to have a consistent vision and values that can be believed in and trusted by the potential employees and contractors. Now, the second item is profitability. As a young company and technology company, it's understandable that Uber has poured a lot of money and continues to pour money into growth, to capture market and get bigger. However, investors must be ensured and they must feel confident that the company, if not profitable now, can be profitable in the future. So our estimate of the value also requires the company to start turning the operating margin from the red to the green for the next 3 to 4 years and start making money in line with an operating margin that aligns with the industry standards. So these things are going to be essential in order for Uber to counter the effects of the bad press over the past year. According to Fortune magazine, the valuation of the company in secondary markets has dropped 15% due to recent scandals. So to walk you through the summary of the valuation that we used, we utilized data that you released to Bloomberg in 2016, and we also made some assumptions and utilized industry analysis in terms of the market size. So we're using a market of $144 billion now. We're growing that market between 4 and 8% over the next 13 years to reach $285 billion in 2030. Uber today commands 40% of the market. We see that growing aggressively like it has in the past 3 years, all the way to 30% in 2020, and then we stabilize it there as we pool resources for growth. Uber currently takes 32% of the gross receipts of the rides. That is based on the data they released. However, predictions are that that number is going to drop as the time goes forward in 2030 to 23%. So we included that. An important item here is the operating margin of the company, which has been in the red for the past 3 years. We see that it's turning positive and aligning with the sector in the next 2 to 4 years. WACC as well should improve as the company becomes stronger and improves its value to investors. This leads to a current value of operation of $54 billion. Now, I want to highlight that the market share and operating margin need to improve, and the recommendations that we made to culture will ensure that Uber is not distracted by ethical issues and can focus on this. Now, for conclusion, I'll hand it over to Megan.
Thank you so much. So we've talked to you all a lot about what our proposed recommendation is and how our 4 factors, vision, values, processes, and leadership, feed into establishing a competitive advantage for Uber moving forward, and how all 4 of these lead to higher market share and higher profitability, which will in turn lead to higher investor confidence and a successful IPO for you in the next 12 to 24 months. And so we welcome any questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Senator. All right, ready?
All right. Financials. So you've got an improvement in operating margins and improvement in market share. Bridge the gap for me in the proposals you're making on the ethical side to how you're going to improve operating margin and how you're going to improve share.
That's a good question. To clarify, are you asking where the numbers came from or the assumptions, or how the culture change will affect the ability to capture market and the ability to improve the...
Mainly the latter, but I think you're going to hopefully answer the former as you go through it.
Sounds good. So I'll start with the one that you want the most. So basically, like we're discussing, the company has been distracted severely in the past year by ethical issues, people in the board resigning, and we believe that that has, 1, led to investors losing confidence in the company, and number 2, as the company scrambles to fix these issues, they're losing sight of how they're going to continue to grow and how they're going to continue to improve their profitability. Now, with consistent values and a vision statement that sticks and is known to potential employees and contractors and drivers, we can ensure that wherever Uber goes to start a market or tries to conquer a market or enter a market with an incumbent, the drivers there, the employees there won't have a bad stigma of Uber because of the culture issues, etc. So in terms of market growth, we believe that having a strong mission, values, and leadership is going to be critical for that. Now, in terms of the profitability, again, in order to go from investing tons of money into growth and cut down on that to stabilize the market growth and then defend your market, the processes and decisions that must be made to make that happen need to be paid almost attention to. So we believe that that cannot be done now with scandals and influx of CEO, influx of having no CEO. So having that part of the problem fixed can allow Uber to focus on what they do best, continue to grow, and then close the tab on spending so much money on growth and start becoming profitable by 2020.
Okay, but let's stick with the 4% number. Why is it 4%, not 2.5% or 6% or 8% or 14%? Like, how'd you get there?
The financial Yeah, so that would be difficult to read, but based on the current market of $144 billion and the numbers we published for the gross receipts, we're able to compute the percent of market that Uber commands right now at the moment. And based on that, based on all the other assumptions, the number that makes the valuation close to 60 and 70 is 4%. So if you look at the growth that Uber has seen from 2014 to 2016, in 2014, numbers were published as well, and it was 2.35% of the market. By 2016, it's 13.89, so 14%. We believe that moving forward to 2020, it is not overly aggressive to think that 4% can be attained, and that is the number we need to reach the valuations that the market is giving us right now.
So you backed into it and extrapolated what you needed to do to hit it.
Yes, so we picked a number, correct. We picked a number that is attainable in terms of the past, and then we didn't push it too high in order to be conservative.
Okay.
You mentioned reinforcement, rewarding your employees. Where does that line up with your projections, given the growth of the company and where you want to be? Are you allocating funding for reinforcement for those employees?
So the reinforcement is already there. The bonus structure exists,
Okay.
where it's probably too high, the current bonus structure. What we're suggesting is the cause for bonus be shifted partially away from financial metrics and goals, and include a culture piece. So that part of their bonus equation includes promoting the Uber culture and extending that out, not just on meeting the monthly goals that they are setting out.
You mentioned as part of the screening process, cultural fit and measuring culture. How do you measure culture in the hiring process?
So the key for us is making those 14 pillars that were the values of Uber, that are the values of Uber now, more simple and more direct into 6 obtainable values that we can measure somebody against. So instead of having a 14-box checklist, so we're trying to evaluate a new employee, we only have 6, and we can really gauge whether they fit those values or not based on their experiences, their what we get from an interview, and also from their initial onboarding to make sure that the culture is the right fit. So it's really about meeting those values and and making sure somebody internalizes them. And we think that that's easier to do when we simplify the values and bring them down to 6.
How'd you land on Diane from IBM?
We actually had a few options. So we had 4 candidates that we were going between, and Diane's background fit the part perfectly. So right now she's the Senior Vice President of HR at IBM, but prior to that she actually worked for McKinsey. So she has a little bit of the consulting experience as well. So she'll be able to drive the company, we believe, forward successfully as the Chief Culture Officer. And so just between the 4 candidates, she was the best one for us, and we think that she'll fit well with the current organization.
What was that decision criteria, though? What defined the best?
Based on background and just based on overall reviews, like internally. So we actually reviewed their performance metrics. So we reviewed how Kathleen had done at Microsoft, and Michael at Bain, Diane at IBM, and so on. So we
defined as what? How they did in what area? So what?
In terms of implementing culture in the companies that they were already in.
Okay.
So she's been seen as being a positive culture implementer already at IBM, and so we're confident that she'll be able to do the same thing.
Okay. So back to the values. Pull those up for me. Like your new values. So I've got my 14 over there on my left and my 7 on the right. So you've cut my values in half. Tell me why you cut certain things. There'll always be hustling. That's part of our culture right now that we have, and now I'm not hustling anymore.
Absolutely, we're happy to answer that for you. So what we did is we combined some of the elements and we retired some of the others that are more so better focused towards entering markets than being established in them. So for example, meritocracy and toe stepping, we don't see that as having a place in a office setting versus champions mentality innovate boldly.
But I'm going to push you. It's the same question I had earlier. What was the criteria? How did you decide what made it on the chopping block and what survived? So apart from your gut and your feel, like what was the process you used?
We took a really deep dive into the 13-page recommendation by the Attorney General in the investigation of Uber. As part of that, we also there were interviews with many, I think it was 600 employees of Uber of what they felt were the criterias of the culture that were
Time.
Okay. Well,